Hey gang, it's Kevin here, Life22, and if you're watching the video podcast, you probably are noticing that the microphone to to my left, it would be to the right of your screen, from what I gather. It probably does reverse again. Um, the the microphone's different, and that's because after we did our show with Della. Um, I had to do we have one we had my one microphone in the office, and I had to put it like right up on top of, like, I had to put it right next to her. And so with my issue with that was that, like, she had to have it right next to her, and it was still kind of clipping out. So then I had to turn all the gains up. Everything was like peaked out, and then I was like sitting on one side of the room yelling at her. Not yelling, but if you were in the room, like, eventually it became a normal conversation. But it was just real odd how, like, it just wasn't picking up. Like, the low cut was cutting out her voice because she's so soft spoken. Um, and so, that got me down a rabbit hole of research, and you know, here we are. We've got a sound mix board now, a smaller one, a little Zoom Pro P4 Pro Track, and a Pod Track, and then we got three Samsung mics now, and so we're all ready to rock and roll here in the studio. Yeah, it was between these mics and the Shure, and the Shure were a little bit more. Apparently, they're indestructible, but these ones were a little. Where they're not as indestructible, they were a little nicer because they allowed you both options, both a USB and an XLR connection. So, so far, so good. I'm a little satisfied with. I'm very satisfied with them. Each one has their own monitor, plus the board has its monitor. Plus, you can take this thing on the go and just do audio podcasts with just the sound. The Pod Track P4. So, those are additions to the studio today. So let us know in the comments below how the audio is. Hopefully, it's not too loud. It's not too. I'm still new at, like, monitoring, being my sound guy. So, it is what it is. Um, our boy Ralph out in the audience, he could tell you. Kevin didn't have the greatest ear, but man, he could mic a drum set. He could mic a drum set. So that used to be my thing, running snakes and SLRs or XLRs, and hooking up front of house monitors and racks, and just, man, the good old days. You always say that, right? People always say the good old days. And I don't know if they were any better than they are today. They never are, right? Like, selective memory, which kind of gets us into our first point. Selective memory, you always seem to remember all the good times of the past, right? Like, Dad was always so much fun playing mini golf, but, like, you don't remember when Dad used to yell at you. You don't as often, right? Like, you don't, like, Dad used to yell at you because you were a kid. You did dumb shit, right? So, and then you forget, like, well, then being a little kid, and you just do more dumb shit, and you get more yelled at more, and you know, back in my day, you get you used to get hit for doing dumb shit. Now you can't even, like, tell your kids that you used to get hit, because that would psychologically affect them to think that you may or you are capable of hitting them. At which point, now they have PTSD, and you have to pay for the rest of their life of therapy because they thought that you may. It's nuts where our society has gone, and the evolution is of human society is only just it's becoming exponential, um, especially with technology, right? Like, all of a sudden, it's like, our technology is outpacing our biologically designed evolution, right? Like, it takes a million years, it takes millions of years for your gut biome to just change slightly and start handling meat and things like that, from, like, you know, roots and rocks and things, which they believe is what the appendix is for. So it's like it takes millions upon millions of years for a species to evolve from digesting roots and rocks to actually eating leafy greens and vegetables, and then being able to change, like adding spinach. Taking just only eating spinach and broccoli to adding carrots was like a couple million year change, right? And then it's like, well, now your gut biome can handle that. Now all of a sudden we're like, well, let's eat everything. and let's do everything, and we're constantly evolving all of our technology, and it's like it's skyrocketing, and it's like our biological evolution is still like right there. So it's like, well, cell phones won't give us cancer in a bazillion years because you need to have that exposure. You need a million years just for minor changes. It's like major changes, like it's one of those. I'm not saying that cell phones give you cancer, but that was always the rumor, right? So if that was true, it would take a million plus years for our brains to kind of like build in a shielding that would like, a meaty cartilage layer that would like, absorb, you know, radio frequencies that eventually cause cancer in 20-year latencies or some nonsense. But anyways, a rabbit hole. Not quite a rabbit hole. So, but all that to say that today's discussion. So check the show later today or this evening because we have Vernon Robinson Jr. Our first interview of the political season is coming on the show via Zoom tonight. So this will be exciting to test out the Zoom. Getting a little butterflies in me tummy, just because it's the first Zoom test, right? Like I've done a couple of them online, and just to test it, but to actually have it's always a little nerve wracking when you've got your technology. It's like your first Zoom call. Like I'm not concerned about how like the call is gonna go, the interview is gonna go. It's making sure that we capture everything, that we don't have too many hiccups, that it's an okay podcast, and that's where the nerves come in. But I do want to. But we got that going on tonight. We're scheduling two of the other. We've got a mayoral candidate and another incumbent alderman to schedule still. We're waiting to hear back from some of the newcomers. But yes, so that's what's going on tonight. And so all that talk about the evolution of our society and stuff like that, I don't know if any of you have noticed out there in TV land that we have become adversarial as a society. I don't know if any of you have noticed that. I think it is what it is. But so as a society, we've become adversarial, right? The left versus the right, this topic versus that topic, which I think innately, I think social media exacerbates it, where it's getting worse because of social media, because everything's right there in your face, because you can have those dialogues real quick. You don't see the person, you don't get to catch their mannerisms, you don't get to see the personal inflections, and so without having that interpersonal contact, people seem to play a little rougher, right? Like it becomes more of a contact sport than it is just a debate, a dialogue, a battling of wits, an understanding. And then with that same distance, people have this like legacy media on both sides have a tendency to just like manipulate their audiences, right? Which is, it is what it is, right? Free speech, what is the cure to free speech or to bad speech is more free speech, right? So just more speech, right? You need to have free speech be free, and people are like misinformation. Well, guess what? Misinformation is cured by the fact that people can keep piling on speech, more speech, to open up dialogue, to open up channels. And with people fighting so much, people are less like amped to talk. And that's why I think that things like this channel, podcasts in general, are just phenomenal, because they open up the door for people to have actual dialogue, one-on-one conversation, and and different than the comment section, right, where all the infighting happens and you don't see people's faces, you don't know their background, you don't know their history, you can't sit there and like look them in the eyes and see their facial expressions. To that point, like the Zoom call is way closer to the in-person than it is to the comment section. So I'm excited to have a Zoom call. I think the Zoom calls are going to be great, just as good as the in-person conversations, because you can see the person, because you can read their facial expressions, which adds more to the conversation. So those of you out in audio listening land, I mean, you can get tone. You're definitely going to get tone from audio, but the audio video is going to give you better. Just like look at someone's facial expression, like they look confused as they're saying something. They look confident. So it's like, and sometimes people do. There is still misconceptions about that, right? Like somebody will say something with confidence, and like either they know they're lying, or they truly believe it and it's wrong. So you are going to get that, but a truly questioning person might say, you know what, maybe you're right. Maybe I will double check. If you're questioning it that much, let me double check my information to make sure. And then you have that dialogue where people are actually growing, learning, and evolving, and it just becomes a really, I don't know, healthy thing. It decreases the divisiveness, the adversarialness of our society by allowing people to have these conversations. Even just you as the audience, to be able to listen to two sides of an argument, to listen to two people conversate, it allows you to kind of want to do the same thing in your own life. And and for me, it allowed, this is like a weight being lifted off my shoulder. It's like an exercise that I get to do, right? Like I get to talk with people. I get to, it's when people talk about conversations, they have a tendency to describe, what would you say it is? Like, it's like a wrestling match or a jujitsu. You're kind of struggling through an idea. Anytime an idea is presented to the world, that is kind of the same thing, right? It's struggling, right? It's a baby. It's learning to crawl. Like, so a conversation can be the same way. It can start out confident, because maybe it's a toddler, or it's a teenager, because you've had conversations with the same person before. So you know the dance, you know the moves that you have to make in order to convey your idea to this individual or to that individual or whatever. And I don't know. It's definitely an exciting time. This should be the good old days, right? Is being able to see beyond the chaos, the flood of the comment section, and rise above, right? And climb up onto a boat and actually have a discussion above all others, right? Instead of those, you know, the gnashing of teeth in the comment section. So, but with this evolution of technology and this adversarialness that's popped up, with the hopeful squelling of the masses in the comment section who refuse to look people in the eye, refuse to, to have this dialogue, this conversation, it is nice that we get to have these conversations. But it's also, man, I'm losing my train. My train is derailing, folks. It is also nice to be able to have this dialogue, not just with people that you agree with, but people that you might agree with on some topics but disagree on others. I had a conversation in the late afternoon, early evening yesterday with a client of mine, and we talked about a wide variety of things, and somehow it ended up on like Elon Musk. And it's one of those like, I see eye to eye with her on a lot of different conversations, but it's like there's a lot of things it's like we don't see eye to eye on, like, Elon. But it was like being able to have that conversation and say, like, listen, like, I'm not about electric vehicles, but I think it's great that somebody like Elon is pushing for innovation in the electric vehicle market, because eventually you're going to need to take whatever your fuel source is, whether it's diesel, gasoline, solar, wind, uh, water, whatever the medium is in which you have it. It's like, man, well, but what happens when you run out? So it'd be nice to be able to take that energy, burn the gasoline to convert it into energy and store it. And store it how? that's part of it, right? Is it lithium ion batteries? Is it is it this? Is it that? So now you can charge up your batteries and still have the fuel source in the vehicle. Like you have a tank of it that is, I mean, essentially it is storing that potential energy, right? By storing the fuel source. But then what happens when you go somewhere like you go to Mars, right? That's part of the gimmick, right? So you go to Mars, well, you can't have combustion on Mars. You can still use, you know, stored pressure to propel your motion, or you can use electric engines, electric motors, because you're just using electric current, and you don't need oxygen for electric current in the combustion process, right? So there's all these things. What happens when Earth becomes unlivable? Like there's like air is scarce. We're like producing it in, you know, we're producing air or synthesized air in some sort of like machines underground, and because the whatever happened, the solar flares have increased, and the ozone has been depleted, and essentially you can't trap anything in anymore, or gravity's just weak enough where oxygen can just float out into space, and now it's just out there where there's no people. So just throwing it out there. But we were able to have a nice conversation because she was pro electric cars. She thought the electric cars were very cool. She thought they were reliable, and just some of the neat little things about it. But it's one of those, like, you can talk to, when you get to have conversations with people, it is phenomenal because you can have them with like-minded people and people that are completely adversarial to you on every topic. And just the fact that you can have those conversations is just, it's a breath of fresh air. So it is nice. It lets you think, and then what happens is you take those like soldiers that you put out on the battlefield, these little ideas that you're placing forward you to march into combat for your being, right? Your entire ideology, and you place little soldiers, which are ideas for each one of them. And some of them have stronger armor than others because they've been tested before in conversation, in combat, right? And then sometimes they come back a little tarnished. They get cleaned up. And that's your brain's way, right? As you are doing your maintenance on these little ideas, your soldiers, right? While you're sleeping, while you're just doing menial tasks, you think about these topics as they come up. Maybe you hear something on the news that makes you think of one of these little soldiers, if you will, if we keep the analogy going. The soldier of an idea, you're cleaning up, you're mending his armor. Or maybe he gets slain in the battlefield, and it makes you have to like rethink that soldier. And like you go to play, verbal chess with somebody, and they thwart you on a topic that you thought you had a good idea on, and they just undermined it. And they got right in behind that armor, and they jammed their dagger in right underneath the arm, and the idea bleeds out. Well, it's better that that little soldier bleeds out in this fictitious world of verbal speak than it is for you to embody that idea, live it, and have and die yourself, right? Like, oh, I'm just always just gonna go grab my food from inside that crocodile's mouth. Well, guess what? If you embody that idea, the chance of your survival is very slim, and that is the beauty of ideas, because as long as if they're wearing the strongest suit of armor, and you have all these little verbal soldiers to, and you've been honing them and working on them, and unless some major revelation comes along, either to you or to society as a whole, that thwarts undermines that entire soldier, at which point you just becomes a hiring process. Now you've got to go and search for a new soldier to replace the one that has been undermined, and then the process starts over. And it is just it's a great thing. It allows you to hone yourself, hone your skills, and reaffirm or rethink your ideology, which somebody presents something to you, and I've used this example in the past, especially when I reviewed the Communist Manifesto. I was always worried, and every couple of years I hear somebody on a podcast having similar fears that I did, that like I was worried that if I read the book, that I would there would be some like revelation in there that would convert me to be a communist or a socialist. And I was like, oh no, but then I'll be one of them. And then I read it. And my little soldiers were so like ready for it that I was like, I listened to it and I tried to keep an open mind. And I really tried to keep an open mind too with it. And like, as I started reading, I would open my mind further to try to like, to not just, because sometimes you take your mental soldiers, your little soldiers, and you have such conviction with their ability to do battle that when you like look at something that like a book or something like that and it can't defend itself, they have to like tear it to shreds when really like there were some points that you could have taken in, considered, and adjusted your course of action with your ideology to reflect those strengths. And so sometimes that bias kicks in and you're like, no, it's got to be bad. It's got to be bad. I tried to open up with an open mind to the Communist Manifesto to see what all the hullabaloo was about. As I started reading, I was like, oh, I shouldn't be afraid of this because this is nonsense. This does not make sense. This is not practical in the world. And I could refute the point. I could refute the points of communism at like every turn using, mainly like one of the biggest points to it is it's been tried in action, so, throwing socialism and communism at, like history. Look at the Gulag Archipelagos and by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. You can just that's just an example of a real life thing that happened. So it's like you could throw different things at it and just decimate the argument. But it's like I just wanted to listen to it to see if there was anything just in the weeds that maybe like, and I couldn't. And then I realized that my fear of it, my bias against it, I was like, well, I'm like, my bias is founded. There's no reason to decimate it so quickly because eventually I'm going to get in a conversation with somebody who wholeheartedly believes it. And you don't want to go just through and just thwart them within seconds. Because what happens is if you thwart somebody within seconds, they don't come to the realization that they were wrong or that they have an issue with their thinking that you need to help them address, right? So, and then you have this person who's just becomes more and more like it's like the fighting that's in the comment section. Like you're not going to be able to convince somebody because you're attacking so swiftly. You're not actually killing these people, So it's like in battle, like yes, you're slashing through people and they don't exist anymore. So you don't have to worry about the idea changing. But behind each of these ideas, especially in a conversation, is a human being that needs to then readjust their sails or whatever. And so in order to help them, if they have a poor idea, you kind of like dance with it slowly, right? You don't just knock at it. No, you don't just TKO, right? You just you throw a couple jabs to show it that it's weak, and then then you go in for the knockout, right? Like but you have to like show it. If you go too fast, people don't see it, and they just think that you're mean, you're bullying, you're bias, and it's like the bias is there because of your accuracy and your strength, but you also need a little diplomacy, if you will. So, but I think it is great that people from all sides can come together and have discussions with other people on podcasts like this. And my yesterday, a couple conversations I had yesterday allowed me to do that. And then tonight's Zoom call, I'm excited for. Obviously, it's the first Zoom call of the channel, but also it's me and Vernon have history. Like I get along with him. We completely disagree on certain topics, and we get along on other topics. So it's one of those. I think it'll make for a great conversation. So I'm excited for that tonight, guys. I've kept you on here for 25 minutes listening to the soothing low baritone of my voice, and so with that said, let us know in the comments below how our audio panned out today, and just leave comments. Tell us your hate mail. If there's a soldier that I brought forward that you've got the chinks in his armor, then go for it. Slay him in the comment section. We're ready for it. We're ready to take it. And then we will see you guys back here later for our Zoom conversation with Vernon Robinson Jr., incumbent for Ward 6. And then with that said, I hope you guys have a splendid day. At the beginning of the podcast, you could probably hear the birds are chirping outside. That doesn't always mean that it is beautiful out, but the birds found some beauty in it, and I hope you do too. So we'll see you guys later on the Life 22.